Hello, I'm Chris Hartwell, and welcome to The Heartbeat, the place where I talk about just a few of the things that make this little guy tick. Today, I will be talking about Ridley Scott's The Martian. Join me, won't you? So in The Martian, we're introduced to astronaut botanist Mark Watney, who was left behind by his crew on Mars, and from there the film kind of just chronicles his struggle to survive, with nothing more than his wits and his fantastically optimistic spirit. And the question that everyone seems to be asking about this film is this the best Ridley Scott film in recent memory? And my answer to that, anyways, is yes, it is. Does that, therefore, mean that it is poised to just sweep the Oscars, collecting nominations for Best Director, Best Picture, and Best Actor? No. Nonetheless, I really did enjoy this ride. No matter how redundant or repetitive Scott's visual style has become in recent memory, this film included, his production design, his color palette, and his shot selection is undeniably the work of a seasoned veteran. I also really have to praise Drew Goddard for his screenplay. He did a fantastic job adapting Andy Weir's novel, The Martian. Obviously, much of the tone and voice that Goddard infused into the film was taken from that original source material, but he too, both in the characters and structure, allowed his own voice to come through. A voice that I rather enjoy. And in my opinion, it was his work that really elevated the film to something great. Goddard not only wrote and directed the film Cabin in the Woods, but also did a phenomenal job on television shows like Buffy, Angel, and Lost. And in each of those instances, he really proved his inventiveness in crafting unique and fun characters and plot lines. And for such a bleak story of abandonment, isolation, and struggle, I personally found it great that this wasn't a despairing 2-hour and 20-minute endurance test filled with hopeless characters. And not only did the tone of The Martian set it apart from recent sci-fi epics such as Moon, Gravity, and Interstellar, all of which I very much enjoyed, the specific characters in this film and the way they interacted with one another was really refreshing and really did allow me to suspend my disbelief. This wasn't a film that had an overt villain. It certainly had differing points of view, differing opinions, and ones that conflicted with one another, but similar to what would happen in reality, they were just differing opinions on how to resolve this conflict. And speaking of those differing personalities, it's really great to see someone with Ridley Scott's clout being able to pull these really talented actors in for these really small bit parts. From Sean Bean to Kristen Wiig to Jeff Daniels to Chiwetel Ejiofor, and the list goes on and on and on. It's really cool to see each of these phenomenal actors elevate these very small bit parts to something great. And that is really helpful on this film specifically because not all of those characters were given that much to do necessarily, or even individual character arcs. But just because each of those actors is so talented, they were able to get you to invest in them with just the little amount they were given. And it really does go without saying, Matt Damon was really the shining star of this film. As Watney, he's just endlessly interesting and fun to watch. In those eyes, you can just see there is such a genuine charisma and optimism and just this inspiring will to fight and to live. And switching gears to talk about a few of the things that didn't quite work for me, I definitely have to talk about those pesky things called expectations. It's that unfortunate situation where a lot of critics walk out of a film and ask themselves the question, okay, was that Ridley Scott film better than a lot of the films I've seen from him recently? And if the answer is yes, then oftentimes we will end up with a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I know I, for myself, really have to take a deep breath before walking in and out of a film like this, kind of exhaling all my preconceived notions, everything that people have told me, and really inhaling my immediate response to that film and actually what I experienced and saw. And this is definitely an example of that. Nonetheless, it still wasn't a perfect film. I definitely walked out of The Martian kind of with this thought of, Ridley Scott really does seem to be circling the same themes, the same characters, some of the same scenes, some of the same production design over the last few films. And that kind of leads to this feeling of different films being kind of the poor man version of his earlier films. So for instance, I really feel like Kingdom of Heaven and Exodus were really kind of the poor man's version of Gladiator. Or Prometheus is kind of the poor man's version of Alien. Or Body of Lies is kind of the poor man's version of Black Hawk Down. Fortunately with The Martian, which I feel like is a close cousin to Prometheus, this does seem to be a step up from that film. Nonetheless, it's undeniable the similarities between the two of them. If you look at the vehicle design from Prometheus to The Martian, or the costume design from Prometheus to The Martian, or the locations in Exodus, Prometheus, and in The Martian were all shot at the Wadi Rum in Jordan. Also, there's the startling similarity between the sandstorm in Prometheus and the sandstorm in The Martian. And there's even kind of a really intense Caesarean scene both in Prometheus and in The Martian. And of course, similarities in a filmmaker's body of work do not make each of those films bad films. Of course not. For me, it's just a situation of if I see a filmmaker start to repeat himself visually or thematically or with the characters he has in his film, I just start to ask myself, why is this filmmaker making this specific story? Does he have something unique to say about it? Is he really fully invested in the story and believe in the story in and of itself? Or is he just doing it because he knows that sandbox and knows how to play well in it? And this is certainly the reason that I'm not super excited for Prometheus 2. I really just want Ridley Scott to pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and figure out, is there something new that I want to say in film? Because that sounds far more interesting than him just rehashing the same thing that we've seen time and time again. Ultimately, I will say though, I really did enjoy The Martian. If only because it's the best Mars film out there. I mean, the competition is pretty stiff, let's get real. We have Mission to Mars, we have Red Planet, we have Ghost of Mars, we have the original Total Recall. But honestly, I really did enjoy this film. The unique, oftentimes humorously vulgar writing from Goddard, the consistent solid direction from Scott, and the really stellar performances from all the cast, Matt Damon leading the way, really did add up to The Martian, in my opinion, being a 4 out of 5. Highly recommended. I would love to know what you guys think, though. Did you enjoy the film? What elements did you like? What elements did you not like? Is this the best Ridley Scott film in the last few years? Does some of his kind of redundant or repetitive visual style hinder your enjoyment of his films, or does that not bother you at all? I would love to know what you guys think, so please let me know. Also, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel. This upcoming week, not only will I be reviewing the first episode of Season 2 of HBO's The Leftovers, I will also be reviewing the films Pan and Jobs, and I would love for you to come back and enjoy all those with me. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.